Hey guys, Lawrence here, and last week we looked at the Geometric Future Model 6 Dolly with the nice yellow and everything, but today we're stepping it up a little bit. We're going to the Model 8, and this is the Cowboy edition because they actually stuck some dead cow to the sides of it. So let's get you guys closer in and we'll show off this awesome case. So right here, the Model 8 Cowboy edition, just like with the Model 6, different versions available, but this Cowboy edition has some nice leather on the side and the top. Glass side panels on both sides once again, and also once again, if we take it off, metal framing with captive screws. Always like to see these because you don't lose the screws and it's only 2 instead of 4, and the window doesn't fall while you're actually mounting or dismounting it. So great to see we still have this sort of frame design. And then as you can see, the leather is just stuck on the side. And it does have their Geometric Future brand name in the corner there. Yeah, it's just a strip of leather glued to a window. Now, looking at the inside, I once again have the Eskimo in the bottom. Ideally, you'd have your radiator slightly higher than your pump, so if there is any air bubbles, it doesn't get stuck and destroy your pump. But with this case, despite everything being made by Geometric Future, the hosing isn't long enough for me to put the radiator over here. Maybe that's an oversight, maybe it's just because this is a big case and it really needs dedicated custom water cooling instead of just all-in-one cooler like what I have right here. Again, vertical airflow, so your GPU nice and vertical, no sag on your graphics card, which should help with the durability of your graphics card as well. And then unlike the Model 6 where you have a bit of an air intake in the front, you get a big intake or exhaust in the back. It's not filtered though, so ideally you'd use it as an exhaust, which then would interfere with your fan sucking air this way and the exhaust sucking it that way. So basically it's just an unfiltered intake at the back. 120s or 140s or triple fan radiator combinations are all supported. Nice amount of room for all that sort of stuff. Now this main chamber, as you can see, quite big. You can easily fit massive motherboards. e-atx motherboards would still clear a standard thickness 25mm radiator or 30mm radiator, sorry, and 25mm fan. So it's nice that you get a lot of room here if you want to go with those massive motherboards. Because again, this is a big case, you're going to want to put big hardware in it. My big motherboard died, so I'm now running a cheap motherboard until AM5 comes around the corner. But hey, we got to do what we got to do to make these videos. Now, something I don't really like is how messy it looks, because there's no rubber grommets anywhere. And that means that, yes, you do have quite some cables just dangling around on the inside because they don't really stick in place and there's not a lot of room to tie down cables on the other side, which we'll get to in just a second. But in the bottom, again, heaps of room, so any triple fan 120 or 140mm combination radiator can easily fit in there with plenty of clearance both for your graphics card, your motherboard, and this closed off bottom power supply area. Your power supply is taking in air from the inside of the case and then exhausting it out the top. There's no front intake on this one. Right then, so let's look at the back of the case. You do have this massive hole in the top. Again, I said it with the Model 6, I prefer a wider slot with like some sort of brush grommet in there to keep things nice and tidy, but we don't get that. You also get one at the bottom, which is useful for taking your RGB controller button or your fan cables. You can unplug them when you're doing a video because the standard Squammer fans do get a little bit loud with this case. Now, in the back, intake or exhaust, depending on how you configure it, there are no fans with this case when you buy it. But what's interesting is you have separate rails here, so you can remove the fan mount rails, mount them to your fans or your radiator, and then put everything back in place after that. Now, what's interesting is the 120mm and 140mm mount uses the exact same rail. You just move over the rail a little bit depending on the configuration you're using it in. That's brilliant. It also means that your 140 doesn't get blocked as much by the 120 mount as we saw with the Model 6. So it's a really nice design. It's almost like they watched my Model 6 review in advance and addressed my comments for the Model 8, so I'm really happy about that. Alright, so just like the main chamber, the backside, again, tempered glass panel, a bit of cow stuck to the side of it, and captive thumb screws, metal frame, so that should make our lives very easy, and it does. It's a great way to mount tempered glass side panels. Looking at this area right here, you can see it's slightly better for cable management than the Model 6, although I'm still missing quite a few of these double slots to route my zip ties through, or these included Velcro straps. The top cables are now firmly stuck in place thanks to those holes that I can actually use this time around, but it's still not perfect. As you can see, I've got a lot of cable mess over here. I've got some cable mess over here near the power supply. And yes, I did put minimal effort into cable managing this because that's what most people sadly do. And I wanted to get a realistic feel for this case. And so with that in mind, I would prefer even more Velcro strap holes or hook through points or something to manage my cables, but it's good enough for 90% of people, I think. Although again, you're going to want to put a very nice high-end system in a case this size, and people who do those sort of builds might also pay a lot of attention to cable management. So yeah, it really depends. Again, you can put 4 drives in, one here, 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 and there. However, interesting to keep in mind, if you want to use the drive mount here, you're going to have to figure out some other way of getting your 24-pin power supply cable in, because it kind of blocks the SSD or hard drive caddy if you want to run this one. It's a strange design, I don't really get it, but that's how it is. You also get only 4 of these mounts anyway, so you have to like leave one blank. Also in the front here below the power supply area, 4 holes here, so if you want to run a pump or a pump reservoir on the other side of the case, you've got a mount for that. I'm showing it on this side because it's a bit easier to show that way. Now, one thing I don't really understand with the Cowboy Model 8 here is the front panel. This is a brushed aluminium, quite like thick aluminium panel, and its purpose is, there's no intake here, there's nothing really to hide, and actually, if there weren't any holes or clips in here, I would say it looks better in black, because this is the only piece of like gray or aluminium colored sort of material on the entire case. So I'm not a case designer, I'm not any sort of designer really, but I don't really understand why this is silver, and it really just doesn't match. In my opinion, for making it really nice and clean looking, the leather band should just continue around the front, and the front should just be black. Now, the Model 8 is incredibly heavy, and so when you pick it up, you're going to want to put some leverage on the top and bottom to like rotate it so you can get a finger under there and actually pick it up. And for that, I don't like this design. On the Model 6, the panel pops up. With this one, it's sliding. So when you put your hand on it to like pick it up, what you end up doing is you take off the top panel. Now, as you can see, this is a very well vented panel. A little bit of a slot here so it latches in place, and then you got all these little sticky outy bits everywhere else, so it actually hooks in place nicely, and it's nice and firm. There is like some flex to this panel, but like, it's not structural, so that's okay. And then in the top of the case, as you can see, you have room for a top exhaust fan. You've got your I/O plate here. Your power supply is in the front. Again, big hole over here, so you can easily route whatever sort of cable in there as well. Big hole over here, so if you want to exit any sort of cables that go past your standard motherboard height, you can also put it at the top if you want to run, I guess, external water cooling. Plenty of holes to get all of that sort of stuff out of the back and then through this back hole. Of course, you can also do the same with the hole in the bottom of the case. Certain things with this case are absolutely brilliant. Like, for example, they thought of putting a tiny little hole here next to your I/O panel, so that when you put in the power supply screw that's buried in there a little bit, your screwdriver is pretty straight on there and you're not going to cross thread your screw or strip out the screw. So that's some brilliant thinking going on with this case. Now, I/O wise, you get 2 USB 2s, USB 3, and then a USB-C port with the fancy new header that I just forgot the name of, along with, of course, mic in and audio out. Could be the other way around. And while I've called them brilliant for certain features on this case, there is still the bottom intake that I just can't wrap my head around. These U-shaped feet completely choke off the bottom intake. I'll put some temperature comparison results up on the screen right now. And also, in order to remove and clean the dust filter, you have to tip over the case. Now, with a basic build like mine, this case is really heavy. If you're going to put a custom water cooling build in here, it's going to be near impossible to pick up this case, so removing your dust filter is just going to be a nightmare. Now, the dust filter is held in place with magnets, fairly strong magnets, because, well, one of the feet stuck to the case instead of sticking to the filter as it should. So, I mean, it works. It's a way of filtering your bottom intake, but you're limiting the amount of air you can get into the case through the bottom, and you're also making it a bit of a nightmare to clean out your dust filter, which is something you should do quite often. Now, this case really surprised me in many ways. I really like some aspects of it. The build quality is absolutely incredible. It is a tank, like a proper tank. A Ukrainian would get their tractor and just pull that away from you. That's how much of a tank this case is. Absolutely perfect. However, there are some sort of design flaws to it as well. Again, I'm going to keep on complaining about the lack of cable management as well as the lack of bottom intake. These are vertical airflow cases. I still think the feet should be taller and the dust filter should be easily removable without tipping over your case. Also, if you're going to put fans in the back here to blow air at your graphics card, you want a filter in there. You want dust filtration, especially because, again, big, heavy case. It's not easy to pick it up and clean or blow it out. So with that in mind, those are some considerations that I have for this case. One thing my girlfriend mentioned was the gray front panel, the aluminum front panel. It doesn't match anything else in this case. So maybe it should just be black with a leather strip in the front as well. But those are more minor things. Again, you can't really objectively talk about styling. I mean, some people claim they can do that, but to me, styling is completely personal. So whether you like it or not is up to you. With that said, would I buy this case? I don't know. It's not really for me because this is something you want to put a very complicated full custom water cooling loop in. Maybe if you don't do it right away, do it in the future, but I'm not the biggest fan of water cooling. So I've now looked at the 6 and the 8 from Geometric Future. That's their entire case lineup at the moment, and I'm very impressed. These things are incredibly well built. They look good. They're well thought through, mostly, except for their airflow with the stupid feet and the hard to remove dust filter. But I really can't wait to see what else these guys are going to come up with. Are we going to see a e-atx Model 4, an e-atx Model 2? Are they going to do one of those tiny little, just unpleasant to work in e-atx cases, a Model 1 or a Model 0 even? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about, and they're a company that I'm definitely going to keep my eye out on. Now, hopefully, if they do come up with new stuff, they'll also send it to me. And if you want to see what they come up with, then you should probably subscribe to this channel. But now, though, I'm just going to tell you all the stuff YouTubers tell you to do, like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell icon, do all that sort of YouTube stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.